Good morning, everyone. So my name is Raji Kadaradian, and as you can see, I'm the Director of Medical Regulation and Informatics at NCCI, that's the National Council on Compensation Insurance. We are a not-for-profit organization collecting data from workers' comp insurers and kind of dabbling into research that is hopefully significant and meaningful to the industry, to the workers and to the insurers, to the doctors and everyone else. So I'm going to share just a few important findings that we have found over the latest round of research on opioids. About 3 years ago or so, we went into some significant detail about the workers' comp insurance experience. We talked to state regulators and doctors in the field, as well as claims adjusters. And some of the findings were very important to us in terms of what is it that, what kind of information does NCCI need to provide in order to assist and to inform the industry. And one of the things that we talked to, when we talked to state regulators, some of the findings and important issues that they brought up were, they were very concerned about the efficacy of prescription drugs monitoring programs, how they work, and how do they, as workers' comp regulators, make sure that they are being implemented and used. The physician practices and treatment guidelines were a key feature to managing the crisis that was identified and that we're all aware of. It was important to see what the workers' compensation can contribute in terms of their perspective on state regulations for prescribing patterns, and then a large concern for them, for the regulators, was what alternatives would there be to treat opioid use when opioid is taken off of the plate, what kind of transition programs there might be. In talking to the claims adjusters, we wanted to form a more real-life perspective and knowing what was happening on the field. And they informed us of various factors that were key to managing the opioid crisis from their perspective. Early detection was a key feature, and they were several organizations that were creating analytic programs, ways to identify risks, the addition risks from the get-go, and there was significant effort being put in using that. The other factors were developing intelligent programs to identify, to monitor the claims as they went through, and the injured workers as they went through their treatment plans. One key factor that they brought up was the lack of healthcare literacy among the injured workers. There was not enough information. They felt that the injured workers and the physicians were often not on the same page when they were going through the treatment, and there was a lot of need of healthcare education for both. They also told us that they looked to the regulatory agencies to support with treatment guidelines, with treatment plans, and other simple regulation that could go far in terms of addressing the opioid epidemic. So here's some data on the most recent 5 years that we have. We collect data for 38 states and then a few other independent bureaus. Steve is fiddling with So largely, what we see here is back in 2013, almost half of the workers' compensation claims with the prescription had an opioid prescription. That has come down to about 39%, or 2 in 5 claims have an opioid. The number of opioid prescriptions per claim has come down as well, from about 4.6 prescriptions annually per opioid claim to 4.1. It sounds like a kind of a small decrease, but it is a meaningful one indeed, as we'll see in a minute. When we look at a way to measure opioid consumption, while the number of prescription is one measure, a more important measure is how much morphine milligram equivalents there are. And as you see here, across some of the states that we have data for, we looked at the morphine equivalents, and you can see that the annual prescribing patterns across states varies tremendously. And so the effects and the rules and regulations that need to address the crisis need to vary accordingly. But we do see over the last 5 years that opioid consumption has, and prescribing in workers' compensation has come down across all states that we have looked at. And the amount of decrease varies across the states, and is quite a bit larger for those states where the initial prescribing was quite high. I'm looking at the Montana folks from the department there. They've seen these numbers already, so it's no news to them where Montana lies, but I'm sure they're working hard at it. On a countrywide basis, we see that the opioid consumption, and we're using here an oxycodone pill equivalence, which is just roughly 30 MMEs. I'm using a lot of the terms that hopefully everyone here is somewhat familiar with. So we just use that just to communicate a little better, thinking of the number of pills. And here what you see is that for any medical claim that's in workers' comp, the OPE, the amount of morphine equivalents, has come down over the 5-year period from 37 to 21. When we look at the OPE per opioid claim, so claim that has at least one opioid prescription, that has come down as well. When you look at the amount of morphine per prescription, on the other hand, that has come down some, but is largely static. In other words, the prescriptions themselves aren't changing very much. One key feature of our research was to look at claims at different levels of maturity, and seeing how much of the oxycodone pill equivalents were being consumed at different maturities of the claims, because we all know that in workers' compensation, the medical treatment can go on for a very, very long time. And as you can see, that with the older the claim, the longer that the injured worker is out of work, the higher the consumption of opioids, going up to about 1,000 or 30,000 morphine milligram equivalents, which is pretty significant when you get to the 15, 20 years. Now, when we look at any annual set of data, you see here, service year 2017, roughly 54% of the OPEs, or of the morphine equivalents, are being prescribed to injured workers beyond 10 years of maturity. Another 20% for 2 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, and only about 7% for those folks who are getting it the first year after the injury. If you look at all these statistics, these have come down across the board. You'll see the changes from 2013 to 2017. We do see a decrease in the use of opioids across different levels of maturity. One key finding that we thought was very important was that, in large part, the amount of morphine equivalents that are being prescribed is concentrated in the top 10% of opioid users. We call them the heavy users. That 10% consumes of individuals consumes 80% of your total morphine equivalent consumption, and the mild users only use 5. So we try to look at those to kind of concentrate to see where the efforts need to go in terms of.
To me this time.
Anyways, so here you have the heavy users, moderate users, and the vast majority of folks, 70. You can see in dark colors you have the opioid prescriptions. Those folks who are having an opioid prescription or 2 only have a total of about 5 prescriptions in total in terms of their medical treatment. On the other hand, the heavy users have almost 40 per year. That's 16 opioid prescriptions and then another 23 non-opioid prescriptions. So clearly the more severe cases, the more severe situations that need to be addressed. But again, it tells us that beyond the opioid, we need to treat when we want to look at the opioid, we need to pay attention to the full picture of the treatments and how those are impacted. And finally, we kind of looked at the different users and how much opioid is being prescribed. As you can see, the heavy users are being prescribed above the CDC guidelines that were put out several years back, in excess of the 1,095, which is the 90 NMEs that the CDC had provided. So if we want to address the opioid epidemic in large part, there is a limited focus that needs to be addressed in terms of the current users, but the current users were perhaps mild users several years back. And so to address that, we need to address it from the beginning because that's a natural progression. That's it for me for now.
So
Thank you.
what we're going to do, thanks Raji. So what we're going to do is actually have each speaker present basically about what their organization has recent findings